In this episode of Titans of Now, we interview Donte Hooker, 13-year veteran of the ServiceNow ecosystem and one of the best architects I know with a wide range of experience in ITSM, ITBM, and GRC. Titans of Now reaches a broad audience of ServiceNow resources, so if you'd like to sponsor this content, check out the links in the description below. If you want to know what I'm up to lately, check out Vivid Charts and stop exporting data off platform for reporting. Hey everyone, after a long hiatus, welcome back to another episode of Titans of ServiceNow. In this episode, we are talking to a ServiceNow architect extraordinaire and a mover and shaker behind the scenes of the ecosystem, someone I've had pleasure to work with on a number of projects, and it's an absolute pleasure every single time. Ladies and gentlemen, Donte Hooker. Donte, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
The pleasure is mine, my friend. Finally, Donte and I have been planning this for like a year.
At least.
At least a year. Yeah. But now here we are. Okay, we always start at the start. Tell us how you got your start on the ServiceNow platform.
You know, I've been doing ServiceNow for 13 years now. I'm one of those guys who started pre-Aspen. A Bay Area kid, started with a memory chip company down in Milpitas, California. And I just got in love with the tool, right? I had one of those cold calls. They gave us an instance and we fell in love with it there. So again, about, let's say 2007, 2008. And I ran with it from there, man. I've been on the platform since then, pre-Aspen. I was on the first user group in the Bay Area. And we helped ServiceNow deal with their first ServiceNow sysadmin certification. That was kind of cool. So that's how I got my start.
Wow, that is way back in the day. 2007 is about the same time I started, but you guys got cold called?
Yeah, man. Yeah, we got cold called direct from sales, and then they actually emailed my boss, which is the director of infrastructure ops. I was an ITSM program manager at the time, owning the monitoring tools and Remedy.
Remedy. Yeah, we were on HP, and it was so bad. We Googled what is better than HP Service Desk, and ServiceNow's marketing campaign at the time was comparing themselves to HP Service Desk, and it was like the first link we found on Google. We clicked it and we cold called them.
It was pretty fun, right? I mean, because once they cold called us, we got them out. They came and did the demo. We were trying to get a change workflow going for about 3 months, and they took our workflow and did it in an hour.
Oh yeah.
That good old days of the workflow editor at its finest back then. So that was really cool, and that blew my boss away. They tried to do the stone face. Well, we'll get back to you. As soon as they left, we're getting that now. So that was pretty cool.
You got to play hard to get sometimes.
You got to, yeah. It was fun. So that's how I got started, man. Just doing that, and it was pretty fun rolling it out for the first time. I learned a lot about it. I was not a application developer at the time. I was actually an infrastructure guy who ServiceNow says anybody can do it. And sure enough, 13 years later, here I am an architect.
Nice. And so what are you doing now?
I am rolling out a lot of GRC right now. I mean, GRC is hot and heavy, as you know. I've been doing policy and compliance, audit, risk management, and VRM. Probably in the last year, maybe did 6 to 8 implementations. Some were small, some were large, but really, really fun stuff. As you know, it can get boring with GRC. It's not fun as the most applications like a CSM, but it's necessary. And I really enjoy doing the GRC application right now, especially when you get into the maturity levels of someone doing like an audit management or risk management.
Buddy, I love GRC, and it's always baffled me why more people don't. And maybe it's just because back when we were using Magic Total Service Desk and HP Service Desk, I was always the dude who had to run the reports out of the ticketing system to satisfy the auditors.
Same here.
Yeah, and it's just like, I hate this. I'm licking every surface in the office trying to get sick so I don't have to
every time. Yeah. And I was the same way, which is why I'm a fan of GRC now, because I was that guy too. Not just a report guy, but I was the middleman for all of IT. So I held E&Y and all those different auditors' hands who set up the walkthroughs. So the fact that ServiceNow has that in that audit application really makes it more fun, so I could see what I used to do in the application and actually tracked. So that was the biggest thing that people had back in the day, is like, hey, I have to do my work, but no one knows I'm doing this work, because they give a report and it goes off. And of course, it takes them time to do it. And the audit has 1,000 questions, but the fact that they could track it in GRC was really awesome.
Yeah. Do you find people use GRC for the kind of, I constantly know what my compliance level is?
Well, They do. I think everybody's at that beginning stage, even though they may say they're more mature. A lot of people say I'm compliant at this level or I'm not compliant at this level. I think everybody for that first implementation is let's just get the automated task, right?
Uh-huh.
That's all they really want to do. They want to get the control test out so they can say, let me just automatically do that, get them out of spreadsheets. That's what they do. Now, these later implementations you'll see, then you start seeing true compliance reporting. That beginning, they really just want to be able to automate all the tasks. Then they come back and say, how can I get better reporting? And that phase is when we start talking about, all right, the compliance score that's at every tier, here's how that rolls up on the dashboard and here how it makes sense. The biggest thing I'm seeing now is that people want these custom compliance dashboards, like in a portal style. Those are the biggest thing. I heard a episode you had here with Nathan Firth back when on the portal. The portal is blowing up for GRC right now. So everybody wants this compliance portal because they don't want people to have access to the back end. They want to have people have access to a portal page where they can go see our compliance. And then especially these security officers that have to produce a PDF and things of that nature, ServiceNow built out an export out of audit management now. So compared with that portal and that export that gives you that findings report out of the audit management application now, those are the two things I'm seeing a lot of. And so that's how that compliance score now is headed.
Cool. Yeah, I've done one GRC implementation and participated in a couple others. And the one thing I always imagined would be the endpoint is being a CISO or being some other party interested in some compliance framework, being able to look at a dashboard and say, 78% compliant, and here's the areas I got to improve. And so you're kind of like perpetually ready for the audit. Do you find people going after that target, or is that just something I'm imagining?
It is, and ServiceNow is getting to that level. They have some serious updates coming out in the future releases that I'm hearing about, enhancements that are going on in that scale. What's going on is that people are definitely looking for compliance scorecards, like true scorecards. I don't know if you remember the old vendor performance module that had scorecards for vendors. They're looking for that same level. They could say, hey, we are 90%. I do a lot of that custom, very small customization on the authority documents, on the policies where they have the compliance score, but they want to see a percentage of compliance from a different angle. So it's just two different things that I do there, but they already have the one out of the box now, which is really cool. That shows you your compliance levels either on the authority document, on the policy itself, and you can also see it down on the control. So those are really cool how you can see all of those. And then the interrelationships against the risk also give you your complete picture.
Awesome. What do you think is the hardest thing for ServiceNow customers to get about GRC?
The hardest thing, if anybody can hear me, the hardest is what you may call the entity. That's the current release, the entity. But before that, it was a profile. But now the entity and these entity types are really the hardest thing. And if people understand or grasp the concept of an entity or an entity type, it's really just surrounding not just your CMDB or your functional process areas. So if we take the example of the CMDB, an entity type could be all PCI compliant servers. So you may have an attribute on the CMDB that says this is PCI for that server. So then when you configure an entity type, you can query or filter down to just all PCI and then associate those control objectives to that entity type. But a lot of times people have a hard time understanding what an entity type is. It's really one or two things, an application or infrastructure or a collection of those that you can associate controls to, whether it be for a specific authority document or control objective or for a specific process. So that's really the hardest thing, is to understand and define the entity or entity type.
Am I correct in assuming the entities it's basically a query with a label that you relate the other GRC objects to?
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. Cool. If you could have any one feature in GRC right now, what would it be?
Oh, in GRC specific, I think exporting data into an actual report that everybody is using in the industry, that's not just for ServiceNow. A lot of times in implementations I go into, they always want this specific output in some type of PDF, that they want to export a specific look. You may get into this thing where they're looking for not just their audit findings or not just their control test that failed, but it's an overall scorecard dashboard. and then take that look and feel and export to a PDF file. Now, I've done it a couple of times, and it does look pretty decent, but I wish ServiceNow would build that into the tool to where they can do that output. And also integrations with external tools that deals with authority documents or other GRC type information for governments or other type of regulations. So these are industry standards that we really can get involved in with ServiceNow application. If they just get those integrations and those exports to different formats down, that would be really cool.
What do you think about all the new risk stuff coming out? Is it changes to the GRC risk, or is it a different way of looking at risk that sits on top of GRC? Because I've been coming at it from the ITBM side, which has its own risk tables, right? But then that integrated risk sits on top of it. How is it on the GRC side?
It's pretty much all the same. A risk is a risk. As you know, before you had your ITBM risk, which was its own entity by itself. But now they're doing an integrated risk. So they're saying a risk is a risk. We need to score and evaluate and see how we're going to mitigate, respond, or avoid. So they're basically taking IBM and bringing them along instead of having them play in their own world, which I think is pretty good. The biggest thing for me that I see in risk, though, is around the risk scoring mechanisms and also the whole process of risk response. I mean, so when you get into that, I think it's a good thing because now I take ITBM or project management risk that I really need to know that's maybe a risk to my organization before it comes over there. It's already living in that process, already living in that workflow, and already being reviewed before that project goes live. That's been the gap this whole time. Project goes live, we have these known risks that's out there, and nobody knows about them in GRC because they're sitting in ITBM.
What other parts of the platform besides GRC are you either really into or have a lot of experience in?
I've been very well versed in ITBM. Now, of course, we know the ITSM space, that's our cornerstone, but ITBM is also a very well space I've been playing in, and HRSM. Cool. Or HRSD these days.
It's funny that you mentioned ITBM because that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show. I'd work with you in the ITSM space on a couple gigs, but I remember when I had my first ITBM gig and I was swinging out of my league, the customer picked me anyway. You know, I was convinced I was going to lose that proposal, but they're like, no, you look like you know something or
you know Donte, so you should go ahead.
That's right. I did say I had, yeah. But then I remember knocking on your door. Can somebody help me?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and then we had a bunch of phone calls, and you set me straight, man. But let me reiterate, Donte is exceptional at ITBM. Exceptional.
Appreciate it.
What part of ITBM do you like the best?
I like demand management because it's part of the intake process. And my former walk of life, being involved in infrastructure operations, a project is a project. But when you know about it ahead of time, then you can work out all the scoring, the staffing. That's always a really cool part for me to work with the customers on because a lot of people have issues with that area.
Yep.
So they love the fact that they can catch things up front, know what they need to do to develop their pipeline. So that's just from a process perspective what I like. Functionality, I'm a big fan of the Portfolio Workbench. When they implemented that, I thought they really had something because the Portfolio Workbench, being able to see your overall yearly, what I'm doing this year, the next year, whatever it is, and then also budget it out and then see what your forecast budgets are, put your projects in their proper place. And now here's my roadmap, not just in theory. If you remember in the old days, we were doing the Guitar Hero roadmap, right? You do start and end date. That's all you had. Now you actually have something with financials backing it into a portfolio management space. I thought that was one of the really cool things. Another one, when they implemented PCR, project change requests, I thought that was a good ad, right? Because we live this stuff, right? This is what we do.
All right? The right acts, man.
All the time. And nobody, everybody changes scopes, changes time, change resources, the project gets bigger, whatever may happen. And we need to do in PCR. So when they put that in ServiceNow, it was an easier sell to other customers because that was the first thing they say. Well, if I need to do a PCR, here we are building a custom table for that. So when they added it, I was like, great. But again, my number one, Portfolio Workbench. Now, that was one of the big things. That, and when it couples with the financials, makes that much more powerful ITBM to sell.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on the demand part. I love the portfolios, but I'm just not familiar enough with the financial deep end of ITBM. But demand solves so so many problems for me.
Quickly too.
Yeah, and what I love about demand is that the default answer isn't yes. The default answer to demand is we'll see.
Yes.
I think about the olden days of ITSM. After you got over the euphoria of catalog, you were dealing with stuff of like generic service requests and incidents that should have been requests and requests and incidents that are really projects in size and scope. And then we have an agile team over there and none of it really fits together. And you're constantly dealing with work that switches type where the customer's already been told yes, or the assumption is yes, right?
Yep.
And if we could somehow finagle demand into the front of everything and break demand's kind of it's a PMO only thing. Like, no, it's an everybody thing, right?
That's right.
And then you could get to the point where the act of demand management is seeing what pile it belongs to. Yeah, that's small. We'll do that. Throw it in somebody's agile bin. Right? Oh, that should have been an incident. Just create an incident from the demand. Like, you know, this is
a defect, create an enhancement. And then again, it's in a space where you can work it accordingly and you can size it accordingly. Most people don't have a problem with doing the work. Is where it should live. And when you say this is your demand and that demand may be one of these 4 areas, now I know where to put it. And that's why demand is always a quick win, because some people say ITBM, project management. No, ITBM, I need a demand first.
Yeah.
Then let's go work the project if it is a project, because if you size it properly, it may be an enhancement. It may be a defect if it's something broken. So I'm totally agree on that demand piece.
Yeah. And just like we asked for GRC, what do you think is the hardest thing for people to wrap their head around when they're doing an ITBM implementation?
Okay, you ready? I gotta get real. Resource management.
Man, let me put on my choir robe here and start saying
resource management. We could figure out how to work a project in task. As I say, it's not waterfall, it's agile, it's wagile, right? Everybody knows development phase. You do your project, you get the project task. Okay, fine. You even kind of know who's going to work on it, right? But true resource management from a ServiceNow perspective, how much time do you need from Donte? I need 100 hours, 200 hours. But those are the biggest things in ServiceNow because most companies may not be a consulting firm. They're internal working. So they're saying, I want Donte half-time. So that concept from resource management where people have to say, okay, I need to develop resource groups to then allocate them on a soft booking, then a hard booking, right? And then validate, and then can I overbook? How do I stop from overbooking? So all of that stuff, again, not consulting people, we live this, but an internal customer who has nothing but internal resources, that's hard for them to grasp that concept because if I need Donte for 40 hours, I'm just going to grab him real quick and say, hey, I need you to do this stuff. And even though he has 7 projects, right, he's over allocated 20 times. And to put that in the tool, and then they look at it and they're like, wait, that doesn't look right. No, it does. That's your data. That's what you're doing right now. And so it's hard for them to consume that because they're living bad habits. And now they have to stop. So then they can't grasp that, well, we don't want to do resource management. That's always the answer. We're not going to do resource. We're just going to assign people to task and then we're going to move on.
Yep. In project management, you can't do everything. You can't be perfect in every way because project management is a guess at what reality will be like. Meeting reality, having reality shatter your plans, and then replanning in real time is the essence of project management to me.
Yes, yes.
And resource management has that capability to go right to the subatomic level. How many of Donte's molecules do you need for how many Planck length seconds? Or it can get super atomic, and people want to get down to that atomic level in the planning, and then someone gets sick, and it's just all your resource plans everywhere just get out of sync.
All of them, all the time, and it's why people don't do resource management to the fullest capacity, right? They don't want it because of that. Like you said, everything is gray. What I try to tell customers is take a step back and think about how you plan it. Just how do you plan it typically without a tool? What do you do? What do you do when Donte gets sick? So if I get sick and I need Robert to back me up during this project, that's going to occur. Why not put Robert on the project as oversight and then allocate hours to him up front? So then we could split the time. And then if you change that allocation, when Donte actually gets sick, we flip that around and change the allocation, updates Robert's time to show now he's going to take over for Donte during this week because he's out. And people don't know about those updates to those resource plans because they think that initial set is law. I can't go back and change it, but there's functionality to do so. right? But again, that gray, right? I think once I plan it and I put in the tool, this is it. It's over. I can't change it. No, you can't.
Yeah.
That's why we have PCRs. That's why we have updated resource plans. You can actually modify the resource plan and send it back for approval to say, hey, Dante's out sick, Robert's taking over, and update the resource. That's why you plan for those contingencies.
There's some profound pieces in there, folks. I was sitting here taking notes because it's fundamentally not the way I've taught myself how to deal with those situations, but so wise. I think praise be to the ServiceNow product owners, because resource management is a lot more flexible that way now.
Yes.
Like, holy cow, this person's MIA. I don't have to really difficult mechanical transactions just to get somebody else slotted in. You can just modify stuff at a lower level.
Absolutely. And there was a time you couldn't do that.
Exactly. And it was just start the entire resource management thing over again.
You couldn't even over allocate back in the day. If you're allocated, no one could put you on a resource plan because you're allocated. And I was like, that is not going to fly.
Yeah.
Right. We did a lot of really true customizing script includes just for that, to make sure they can over allocate.
One question that my audience tells me that they appreciate is the deep trench war stories. Can you tell me about a situation where you were in the trenches and things were not looking good? And how did you fight your way out of that to victory in a ServiceNow context?
Man, I got one. Maybe 7 years in, before all this new functionality came out with the platform, before Developer Studio, I got tasked with a custom compliance application that was masked as a GRC implementation. And it was truly building a custom application from beginning to end to set compliance on every server application that was deemed as PII. We developed it in the UI pages. Don't laugh at me, okay? We did that. We did UI pages. And it just didn't look good. It didn't play well. It didn't show the customer what they really wanted. So I think the biggest we learned about this situation is, okay, what are we doing right now? We allowed the customer to dictate to us what we should do. We allowed them to tell us exactly how it looks. They didn't want this, they didn't want that. And we listened. So we tried to go super nerd custom code and went straight UI page, old CMS portal before the service portal. Now we're back to the hard part. We did a demo. They hated it. We hated it. So the first thing we did was, all right, listen, ServiceNow has a platform that they do very well. Why are we trying to build something that be built on the native platform? So we scrapped the whole thing. We built it on the native platform just as this basic form and related list, and had a CMS page of it, and they loved it. So the lessons for me was in that, don't overcomplicate things. Don't allow them to tell you exactly what it should be. Use the platform for what it has. Because again, we tried to go overly custom because it didn't exist instead of extending a task table. But just overthinking and just not knowing, again, I'm looking at today's, of course, I did a service portal and all this nice fun stuff. But again, it wasn't available. But that was the hard part, trying to think outside of the box without using the native platform. So again, how we came out of it was just using the native platform for what it had and explaining to the customer, this just doesn't exist yet. And now you fast forward years later, they came back to us. We built that entire application on the service portal, which now they love and they continue to use.
Yeah, it reminds me of something I keep on bumping up against, that expression that the customer is always right. And I like to qualify that with the customer's intentions are always right.
Yes,
you know?
That's a good one.
But they're coming to you because they don't know how to build it. So why are you going to listen to...
I always put in there is the customer's process is always right.
Right.
But then that's not even right.
Right. Have you ever heard my Amish metaphor?
I have.
You have?
Let's say it again.
Okay, cool.
Say it again.
If you and an Amish person were trying to solve a problem, you're both talking to somebody who wants to go from Pennsylvania to New York. The Amish guy's going to be, okay, well, we got to figure out the size of the wagon to carry all the dried goods because it's going to take us days for our horse to take us there. Meanwhile, you're sitting over here, why don't we just go to the airport, man? We'll be there in 2 hours.
Exactly. I think that's the best analogy because, again, they only know their world and what they've been doing. So if they've been doing, like I just go back to GRC or even ITBM, they're tracking projects, they're tracking compliance on the spreadsheet.
Yep.
That's what they know. So their requirements aren't going to be based on a spreadsheet. Yep. So the object of what we need to do at that essence is that, hey, I see your spreadsheet, but let me show you how ServiceNow handles out of the box. So I always start with, here's how it works.
Yeah.
How we're going to fit to out of the box. not how we're going to change out of the box to fit your Excel spreadsheet.
Yep. Yep, I'm with you. All right, Donte, we are at time, so I'm going to give you the final word so you can tell us things you wish for. If you could change the ecosystem anyway, how would you do it? Or if you could give up-and-comers advice, what would it be?
I would choose up-and-comers. Learn everything you can about the platform. And what I mean by that is just don't go run out and just learn everything and just try to read everything in one fell swoop. No, as you deep dive into the platform and you get yourselves into situations, remember what ServiceNow does. Their intention is to provide a good product. They have a platform that can be extended. Do not go out there and reinvent the wheel, right? Many times we become Java developers and we get out there and we want to code. Sometimes it's just a checkbox. Check the box. Don't code if you don't have to. And it helps the customer more than you know. Writing some great code may be great for us, what I like to say, who want to geek out. But when the customer goes to upgrade, when a customer goes to change something, and they have to look at code rather than unchecking a box, it makes their life harder. We're no longer there. We're consultants. They're going to remain there. So make sure you leave them with good low code that they can maintain. That's what I would say.
Sage advice. All right, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining, Donte.
I appreciate you for having me, man. Anytime, and have a good rest of your day. Everybody stay healthy out there.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, brother.
All right.
Bye. If you'd like to sponsor this channel's content, email me at the address pictured here. If you need a conversation on where your ServiceNow implementation is or where it's going, you can reach me on Super Peers and book a short consult. If you want to contribute to high quality, high frequency output, consider a donation. If not, I still appreciate your viewership. Consider hitting the like button and sharing within your network. Thanks for watching.